Do I include a U-turn and inverted U relationship with the model or not? So those are, so even here, when you are doing propensity scores, you have to think about all the variables that might help you to create the control. It's not all of them are useful, but you need to think about as many as possible. Remember, the idea is pick the key ones that can help you to reconstruct without missing, without the effect of unmeasured ones. So the change in the outcome for the takes place in the control group is taken as what would have happened, the treatment group, the absence of the intervention. I will explain this design in the pattern. This is summary, yes, and the notes. But there's always an assumption that this is, I started with these two groups. Randomization will require that this and this are together. If you randomize this and this will be together. But why this design is not for randomization is because when you're choosing the villages, you try to make sure they're similar, but not, they don't need to be perfectly similar. Because you know, you can count on this. The trouble people normally forget is this assumption that this is how my control is moving since it has no intervention. It's tilted here. If I were to measure this angle here, I expect that if this group also had no intervention, this angle here, the straight line is almost the same. If this was increasing at a rate of 10%, this will also increase at a rate of 10% without treatment. But we saw previously that that assumption is not as simple as it says. We saw that in non-compliance, this tilt is for compliance. This one is a tilt for compliance and never takers. So meaning, whenever you make that assumption, you have to make a very strong assumption. So there are ways of testing it, especially when you have data from previous surveys before there. If you have some data on these villages you have randomized, so these households you have randomized, okay? From times before you start your treatment, you can actually look at it, what used to happen before. If it is following the same way, say it's fine. Otherwise, it's not. And then sometimes you recommend that instead of doing 2 10 points, if you are using a difference in different design, at mid-term, collect some data. Such that it may not be a lot, but collect some data that can help us. Because then we can know whether it is going the same direction or not. You can only see a trend if you have at least 3 points. Otherwise, you can't. So normally for the organizations I've worked with, that's my advice always, that at mid-term, collect some data. That doesn't need to be as elaborate as a baseline and endline, but something that can help us to test that actually we're not getting too much. Yeah. And the two, we said we can also use now propensity scores. First, instead of me just applying my analysis on this and treated arm, I first recreate by using the baseline characteristics, sort them out first. Then after that, I apply differences. It helps to remove the never take as if you think about it conceptually. Yeah. In a regression setting, it is as simple as this. You read in status SPSS, you get the variable of interest, the outcomes, doesn't matter from control, intervention. You regress them on the treatment, and you regress them on time, and the product of time and treatment. This is the product of time and treatment that gives us. Because product of time and treatment, if you think about it mathematically, is actually a difference in difference. This one is a difference. This is the first one here is a difference. Intervention or intervention. This one is time 1, time 2. The interaction is actually a difference in difference. So it gives us this. So we normally create a product and add it in. Then we can add in other variables that make sense to the model. Okay. So that's a power of difference in difference, and that's why it's very common. You can do some kind of randomization. It is so flexible. When you reach things are not doing very well, you can apply propensity scores on it and improve the estimation. So that's why it has made it the most common and almost is becoming the universal way of doing impact evaluations. Okay? But it is more expensive than propensity scores. You need 2 arms. Propensity scores, you just need 1, and at the end, you just do the. This one requires you measure at both baseline and end line. Propensity scores just measures end line. Propensity scores requires the measurement of control at the end line and treated at the end line, and then you do constructs. Difference in difference requires both of them. But if you match them, the better. I've talked about this guy for a long time. Steps, needs, and just finish that. There's one key thing, however, about it. So that's what I want to talk about is potential score, but we have talked about this over and over again. So what I was saying is this, that these are the steps. You get a propensity score first, and then you apply it. But what I wanted to say is this, before you run the analysis, you can plot the propensity scores like this. After you run a probability model or logistic model to predict the probability of someone being in the treated arm. And then I can plot them, plot the values for the control arm and the intervention arm. They will look like this. These units in the data with the values that are outside a red one, you cut them off because they don't have anything to match with. These red ones, you also cut them off because actually the outside area support. And there are many authors who are opposed to that. You see, remember that difference in time series, or some of you in time series. How people say, when you difference, you lose the first observation. And many people are opposed to that. The same thing people are opposed to propensity scores for that reason. Because you can actually throw away 30% of the data. Okay? So that's why when we combine with the when the design came up because of the difference of the proposed two arm, you reduce on this because the margin was already there, but you are just improving on it. Compared to when this happens normally when you just purely get observational data, treated and look for untreated. People have been on the air this. When you look for those ones who have not been near this, there's no form of randomization whatsoever. You can still recover the causal effect by doing this. But if there was some form of randomization like a difference in difference design, then you eliminate very few. Okay? So these are deleted from the system analysis. Set missing. It's only these that are analyzed. So if you are running propensity score matching method, don't be shocked that you had 1,000 observations and all of a sudden you're left with 400. Because the remaining 600 don't match on both sides. Because it looks for the green one, sorry, the blue one and the red one. If there's no balance on both sides, those ones should go out. So I know some senior scientists who tell you, don't even go there. I don't like that method. How can I throw my data? No. I've wasted a lot of money on collecting that data and you're telling me I throw it away. Yes, sir. I mean, as far as estimating the causal effect is concerned, because still I can use the other data to write something else, which doesn't require impact estimation, which requires publication for something else. You can always use it for something. But actually, interestingly, from my experience, it has never happened. I think the maximum available loss is about 22% in one of the studies, where 22% of the observations, we have to cut them off.
Now, I'm just wondering, because for instance, if you use time series, you realize that there is always some sort of a limit. There is a limit, which your study inferences will not be very varied. For instance, if you are below 30 years in a time series study, the inferences wouldn't be regarded as very great. Now, I'm wondering if you're using the method here and your study didn't have a lot of data, and you lose some of the data as you settle. Wouldn't that invalidate your inferences, your results?
Very true.
Does that mean that you need to have as much data as possible so that even when you lose some, your study would still be?
Yeah, the interesting thing is no one actually plans to use this method alone. Now, for people who are really want to do rigorous evaluation, no one plans to use professor scores alone. It's normally comes in when someone calls you to evaluate, help them to evaluate, and they didn't do the control, the baseline data. When the baseline data is there, then difference in difference combined with this one is more powerful, because then you don't throw away too many observations. So, and for a few studies that I've used this, including when I was a student, these are large cohort studies, very large. That even if you throw away, you still remaining with tens of thousands of observations. But yes, if you throw away and then you say after 400, if I computed the power of estimating causal effect in 400, some says 400, is less than 80%, then I would stay away. I will tell you as a client or the person I'm working with, say, for this one, my friend, we can only report a contribution is the outcome, but impact value we can't, because when we try to do it correctly, our sample size is done. It is in that case, however, that's when as a statistician I get a job, because then you will not manage. Because then there are many methods. I talked to this morning the switching regression models, indigenous treatment effects models. But now, and the complicated econometric models, that now I can switch to and I still be able to give you an estimate. But when things are very right and easy, all of us can actually analyze these guys. So I'm only useful when things go wrong. Yeah, in fact, that's it. You know, one time when I did some work in Mozambique, and actually that's what was one day we were working with his from Brazil. That's what he told me. He said, well, Simon, this one, he's an economist, a doctor. Simon, I can handle this myself. I don't think they should pay you for helping me to do this. I told him I was actually counting on that money. But this is a very simple thing. What the model they were using is emerging commercial farmers. They're using them to support smaller farmers, and we were doing impact evaluation. So I was a survey manager for them. And then at the end, he refused to give me a job for analysis. He told me we have looked at it, we sat down, clean the data, we look at it together. I say I can analyze. I told him I can't go beyond this step unless I get paid. Well, he got annoyed with me because I wanted to pay it more. I'm a Ugandan. So wanted more. So these things are very easy. I don't think I should pay for it. So the guy refused to give me the work. So what I'm saying, when it's very simple for us statisticians, no one even cares about us. When the things become very complicated, that's when someone knocks on your door. Are you there? Can you come and work on this together? But that's the beauty of I normally tell my students, that's a beauty of it. The idea is, if you have many people with potential to do things around you, we shouldn't quantify our success only in terms of money. The success is also what people I know. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering, although this is practical for evaluating problems, I remember sometimes I tried to write something using format, but then can I find definitions of the data that I can quickly find a problem and use some of the things?
Yes, I think even in UDHS, I think I've seen some paper, someone using it on access to water and how to improve the livelihoods using the DHS data. I think in one country, I can't remember, but we can use it actually for UDHS data. So yes, there are many previous studies we can. UAR 854Q. This car here is, I think he has blocked someone who wanted to, 854 UAR. Okay, so what have we said? We have talked about, I close what we have been talking about. We have talked about instrumental variable as a method of estimation. We find it in encouragement design. We find it in regression discontinuity. We find it in non-compliance. But we also talked about instrumental variable as a way of designing and evaluating the project. We have talked about difference in difference estimation as a method of estimation. It can be used to estimate ITT, ATE, but also it can be used in terms of proposed evaluation design as it is own method, standalone method. We've talked about propensity score matching. We have talked about regression discontinuity. Those are the classical main and the common designs used in impact evaluation. But there are also synthetic controls where you need a long-term series of before. So you create a control not from only the observations. So you look at the whole history of the past and you use the whole history of the past to create a control that you use for the current situation. With the time, I think they will become common. And then there are regression methods that I don't want to go into, except if we are doing them on the computer. Because regression methods, by definition, I can't explain them without writing formulas. And I'm a teacher of statistical modeling, so I am actually very good at doing that. The switching regression models. These are econometric models we can actually use to estimate the causal effect under certain assumptions. They can be used to estimate even effects much larger across the whole nation, the country, compared to just the difference of people. So what I will do, I didn't plan to talk about that today, but I think I'm going to have one session where I come 1 hour and we'll just focus on these methods and maybe some simple data set and just apply them. For now, I wanted to summarize what we had covered last week. We also covered last week a simple proposed intervention design, although we didn't give it the name. But actually, when I was making a discussion on counterfactuals, my first discussion was about why can we just compare the beginning and the end? And I remember using that same diagram there. But the problem is this proposed intervention design cannot give us a causal effect because, but it can give us a causal effect if you are. I sometimes logically forget this. This is your type of intervention, T0. This is T1, right? This design is called proposed intervention design. The other one has a control, or the difference as a control unit. This one just a simple one. I give you an intervention, I follow you up. In most cases, for when the time between this and this is longer, it doesn't work. But I can imagine if the time is just 2 hours. Surely, why should it work? If I give you a painkiller now, and then 1 hour later, and I measure whether the painkiller has worked, so I think the time element matters, because what matters is this. But if they're talking about government projects, there's not some project like that. Most of the projects want to keep people's welfare, attitudes, behavior, and poverty levels, and so on. So in most cases, they take time. So because of that, you cannot tell. You can easily say it is this, when actually it's supposed to be that. So that's why this design is never considered for impact evaluation. Okay? But it is very interesting. I've gotten many people calling me to help me analyze this. They have already finished. Then you tell them, one time, test and treat design, malaria consortium. You call and say, they call me and say, can we analyze that impact of that project, test and treat? So we had to actually convince them, John Hopkins, guys to go back and collect some data in communities where that design has not reached. Unfortunately, it is very few. But many use of provinces go to the construct. But they are not only that. So it happens. That many times. There's another organization I can't tell. Simply fail to correct. So we told them, sorry, we can't do anything. We can only say how much you have contributed, but we can't say your impact, the cost of it. Yes, sir.
One thing I've learned is this is quite important having a baseline data. Which is very, very relevant. I don't know, maybe my colleagues from the ministry have it. Let's take the oil pipeline time. As our we have the baseline data, what the situation is and what it be after. Then the same line will come and do the impact assessment of these projects. And maybe the ministry can also tell us what is the frequency of this study? What are calculated million, but impact assessment studies is very few, very, very few. Let's take an example of this thing still being created with the other time. There was the math into something that was again yoga, question, now the same as parish. I don't know that in carrying this impact assessment before we come up with other new programs. Maybe our colleagues from government can tell us.
Thank you. I think Joseph and Rosemary can answer. And
from our side of projects, this has been an issue of concern, actually. It's something that we are thinking about, because just like you mentioned rightly, that if you don't have data at the baseline, then it will be very hard to evaluate a project at any point. And yet this is something that is not being put in a lot of emphasis, because maybe, on the other hand, we didn't know that it was necessary. What we always ask for at the end of the project is just a completion report. Those assumptions sometimes we don't even take into consideration, just a matter of looking at a document, say, yeah, it has achieved this outcome, but to which basis, we don't know which method the evaluations are being used, we don't know, and it's something that we want to take back home. Perhaps as the project design their feasibility studies, under some of the modules they can consider undertaking a baseline. For those feasibility studies, I should mention are very expensive studies. Yeah.
I think Rosemary can say it for maybe I could just say that we normally, especially at logical framework, we request to the institution baseline. But the baseline indicators are mostly valued to statistics from reports. So we want to improve, for example, the capital income project. And they tell you that as a 2019, the GDP per capita, and when we have this integration, this will be the GDP per capita. But like we already noticed, it's something that we explore. There are so many contributing factors beyond the integration. So when it comes to the assessment, it becomes tricky to know what was the exact contribution of this particular intervention. But like you have already said, I think it is a lesson for us to ensure that there are studies that are tied to that particular planned intervention prior to the project, so that as all evaluation becomes much simpler and more meaningful and to inform action, especially for projects what should we have phase two of the project. For understanding at least having preliminary impact of phase one, because there we are already committing government, but we do not know the outcome, yet there has already been some intervention. So I think it's one of the things we need to focus on that can be improved. In terms of the oil pipeline data, of course, you know, our the oil pipeline is not a public investment. The joint venture and models have really been constructed by the investors. Of course, government represented by we're just supposed to verify the financial, but there are some studies that have been undertaken. But this is not a public investment because we have Total that is the lead investor in this venture where government participates through about 20% shareholding in what should be the ECOP company. And then we have SINOC, we have Tanzania producing last week, so that we can Tanzania signing what the government has been, and also Tanzania confirmed their stake in it. So they are just models, mostly the financial models, because this is not more of an economic project that you're looking at impacting on the life of the people. But since they are private investors, for them they are looking at profit, not the scope of your impact on but on the government side, like you already know the results of the installation of the refinery that should be coming on board. Of course, there have been debates on whether this refinery is feasible or not. And I think that's where we need to come in from an economic point of view, beyond the financial. It's feasible for us to have a refinery and the pipeline. I think that should be a question for time when the answer is clear. But looking at, I always tell people when you go to that road, Malaba, Kampala, there's a lot of them. Most of the cars that keep coming to Uganda are filled with oil, petroleum products. That finally, how is it going to impact on that economy? Of course, you're going to have a reduction in maybe the rehabilitation expense. Much as the financial system will not give you a positive return, but economically, we have some of those other benefits. And I think that's why we need to think and try to compare and with government taking the right decision to have these two investments. From NPO and since they are more important.
Thank you.
So much. For my time I've been in government, I must say I always see stakeholders using these complicated designs to analyze their steps. I don't know why, but actually, for the studies, I've seen actually even the recent one I saw at, I participated in the one at Opium, where we are trying to establish why most livelihood programs are not yielding the intended impact. For example, like reducing poverty. We always go for the dark CoE with that criteria.
Effectiveness, efficiency.
The issue, impact, relevance, efficiency. These are the approaches we go for. Like he said, sometimes I think these statistical approaches require like so many data points, and in most cases, the way we roll out programs in government, sometimes it's not even evidence-based. When I come to workshop and ask people, is the program working, and people say yes, it can be a verification for the next phase. And I know in the DC, it's so hard because sometimes when you stand for the facts, you say you're blocking the project. They will engage another gear. Through other connections, they threaten you until when you lose your objectivity. But when you stand and try to follow some of these principles, I don't know how we are going to solve it at those levels where decisions are taken. That integrity is a very big issue, especially where these projects are conceptualized. These people doesn't make sense, but sometimes we are called rubber stampers. We just stamp. Even if a certain project is not going to yield that impact, we try to make sure that it is designed well and it is studied so that we have a good stock of data set which can inform the other studies which will happen as the project ends. But most importantly, this one is for my people, the residents, and the way we conceptualize projects, we don't always budget for this study. Most of the money, actually, like the other time somebody raised, the administrative component of the project is always spent faster than the development component. We prefer to pay ourselves so fast and even implementing the actual activities of the project. So from our side, we don't always plan to undertake some of these studies. That's why at the end of the study, we just close the project and we just say, that one is done. And we still have interest. Somebody will say, I've done A, B, C, D, and I qualify for the next phase. Like we also said, when you follow some of these techniques, like Simon was highlighting, they're so expensive, especially what is the cost of it's huge, really money. So we always find ways, and that's why we don't actually try to implement some of this. Now, from the policy side, I don't know how we shall call what I'm going to explain. But before a policy comes into play, we try to do some kind, I don't know how we call it, but right. No, it's not there, but when the way we conceptualize projects, and this is a key focus area for this center, is the M&E component. We prefer, spending the money. If the budget is maybe 10 billion, which is only on activity. There are other soft things like some evaluative studies, baseline survey. There we don't budget. And our budget, this is cuts. Now, those are the soft points where they will cut your money. Okay, that's why we were saying that as we review the chart of account, M&E funds should be reinforced. Because it is very hard for you to achieve results when you don't even understand how results come about. Most, as governments, the units are there, but are not to do. For example, if you requisition to undertake maybe like an end of project study, you say, why are you doing this? We already know that the project is even over. Why are you wasting government money? And when the budget cut comes, that money goes very fast. And we think, besides building capacity across government, but this money should be ring-fenced. So that some of these studies, especially the baseline study, I know most of us have done our strategic plan, but we don't even have this right thing. What we have done, we have forced ourselves to even set targets. What is on what? You know, we don't even have. And this plan, of course, they come there and when you try to resist to pass it, they say, who are you? Why are you why are you stopping this program? So there are challenges, and but we shall move slowly with this center of excellence. We think the biggest gap, actually the biggest gap in implementation is M&E. We don't always focus on, the M&E components of any project. And Rosie, I know you understand the way, you see, the way they, I don't know, maybe you will ask Rosie to tell you how we get a next phase for a project. It is really a gamble. The way projects get funds to implement other phases, you'll be shocked. But of course, they always pass, and money is spent. And I don't know whether they have realized that's why we don't get the results of these projects, because they are not studied. Like I told you the other time, we came up with the parish model. Now, some stakeholders jumped on the parish model. They started talking about it, but now, people who are critically analyzing what is happening, they ask their new people. Now, this parish model, this parish, what are we going to do with it? From these other yogas and what? Of course, no one could answer properly. So, of course, people could use statements, and these days people have the issue of using data for policy is getting interest in government. People want numbers. You don't just speak very good English and they say, yeah, it is okay. They were asking, what are the statistics showing that these approaches, the yoga and others have failed? And now this is the right approach for delivering services to the lowest unit of the household. Of course, it is a good approach to implementation, because we are taking services to the lowest administrative level. But how sure are we that we're not going to eat the money? People can share the money. How sure are you? After all, even down there are no structures. How shall we account? This is taxpayers' money. Where are the accountability institutions under there? Who do we hold accountable? If we say 45 million to the parish and it is shared, but the parish chief is not in the structure. So the reason I'm bringing this is because we have not yet appreciated the use of these studies. If somebody had done a comprehensive study trying to show that whereas there are other delivery mechanisms of services to the lowest level, but we think when we take this approach, there is evidence here that it is going to work. So
sometimes I used to the case of blood and social protection. I saw that we were so rigid or even moving a project without an impact evaluation design. They were like forcing it. Any project you must put how it's going to be evaluated. And the impact, not this the performance of the research framework, but the design had to account for any project that you work. I don't know whether they consider it, but in government, I think where we are doing this kind of planning, we may start emphasizing now that there is a project preparation plan that was exposed, and you are even realizing the importance of impact. Hence, the importance of baseline studies in the whole cycle. I do not want to smile or laugh, but when you say there are targets and you don't know even where, because you have just given us a indicator.
You see, for donor funded projects, because of course, because you want money from them, whatever they ask you, you give. Now we've reached the DC, and I think this is an opportunity for us because the guidelines are being reviewed. It is, I think we can put another maybe another guideline down there that as you design a project, please make sure that there is a clear evaluation design for this particular project as it's end. And as you think of another phase, we need ABCD to be there. But still on the donor project, yes, we always provide some of those ABCD evaluation design, but the issue is implementation. At the time of the closure of the project, we left with nothing. You spent all the money, and in a way, you circumvent the system, but you don't even get the study. You just close the project.
So as well
for us, actually for us, well, you know, in this country, everyone has a right to, of course, to undertake some studies. But for us, we come in from one angle that we have in the act, we have the provision of evaluating some of the government programs and projects. So we always commission some studies, especially to inform whether government should continue to invest in a certain project or to close it or even maybe remodify it. And the most recent one was the UPE, where we were so bold and told the government this 10,000 reduce, this 10,000 capitation per people is too inadequate to produce somebody point. And we gave a roadmap, and I know it is informing the current, that they are reviewing the white paper and the whole education system. And we are proud, though for us, we don't win by getting money, but if we see things moving, maybe that's how you add impact. But from this training, I don't know how we are going to encourage people to use this complicated, design. It's a big problem. People prefer simple life. Okay? You hire a consultant to do 4 years study, they will just cut and paste. They give you a code. I know in the health sector, I think they do serious studies because I've not been there. Maybe they are the ones who these techniques have been left for the health sector. That's why I see some randomization. Yeah? But for us in the mainstream, maybe even people who design the guidelines don't understand them. There's a big problem. I don't know. The center should do help and build capacity across government.
I think I agree with you on that.
Now for the, you see, planning is very hard because planning is not dreaming. You don't just get a dream and say you're going to do it. That's why you see when you ask for money to do a baseline survey, you know, even somebody who does not understand that will shout that you're just wasting. So we have leaders who don't appreciate certain things. So if something comes up, for example, like this parish model, somebody quietly told me, where is the comprehensive study which has informed this model? Say, oh, we shall maneuver, get the money. But of course, at the back of your mind, you know it is not right. But if the people are not appreciating the use of statistics for planning, it is also a big problem, and the center has to also help us on this. Whereas the Bureau is trying its best to make sure that the statistics are there. But uptake, are people using the numbers for planning? Somebody just sits and conceptualizes the project and it is funded alone without even consulting. That's why they distribute upwards and no, input.
Sorry, my friend.
Two things are coming up. We are in the right place. I know people from offices, when we work in government, we have what we call a back office, something to report. And here it may not be a long way. We are like just each other see what to write. If we wrote that when we study or training, we have learned that we are spending where we cannot even ascertain because we laugh and we say. And until I came out, members that we should have the evaluation formula for all projects, whatever projects to go, that to me this is very complex. It's very complex. This is methodology. And correctly, that's why it's not that. Because I'm not saying that it is that. That's why it's not that. Because if you are in your office, one, why bother? What are you getting? By giving people and use this stuff of thing, why? Exactly. You are not. Now, if you, and yet, in the outcomes and the impact, the results framework, you want us always put those indicators that need this evaluation. Okay? We are forced to do. Then in the verification, we say we should look at it. You get it? We were with him, I think, for our field project. And they were saying impact indicator GDP. They were saying how we like on business. Why don't we have that at a very high level in the main class? And for us, we put what we can. They said, no, that one now it's a given. Also, outcome indicators, reduction in the time for preparing data. The proposal of the projects that go through PIM that are approved. That's not the area. You get it? And we will force us to. With the verification, we shall look at the report and repeat it. Can you imagine that? Now, this brings in back the element of what? Need for capacity. That's number one. Number two,
Some of us were around when computers came. Professor Dembe, we had the Makaka, statistics, who was teaching us computer. But sincerely, we were doing computer like history. The mouse is that device, comma, and which one attacks that's what it's from. Yes. When writing, people getting first classes, you would say, why we are not developing graph relevant application, like a master's in computer science or in electrical engineering. That's how we're getting marks. But think about it. Now, what do I say? Computer experts are big different. So, the which they have established, their salaries are different. We used to go to I was getting $200 the phone was big, $500 because it's a rent. You get it? So, if we start slowly, you may find that M&E gets now professional treatment because people are not doing. We were struggling approving their contracts in the system of the state. We wrote around 10 times justifying why this. Because we're saying this area is not known by many. You cannot get many of them in the Ghana. They are not there. That's why you can go to the secret for it. So that's the second one. When we are moving forward, as we start, you know how you change farm. Research, it's not what is being realized. Yes, we need to know it's yeah, but now, people are looking at seeing this guy, it's seen. So even this let's start saying your reports suggesting. That was the second paper. Now another one. The question. This one is so very good. You are the plan. But you have not told us properly whether you actually evaluate the impact. You are also not saying it properly. We evaluate in Uganda. Do we have those studies done? No.
No, you said this is many
Now, that's right. That's why the other time I said, what is opium? You know, opium is spearheading the evaluation function in the country. And we even have the evaluation fund and I think it's a second. So they are actually key beneficiaries to this. And they have their challenges. Because you see, when you get funding to evaluate, you don't want somebody to know you have the fund. Because they might shoot it down, this evaluation is not what they are getting. So there are issues. And them as being the coordinators for the evaluation function, or also the policy, the M&E policy for the country. I don't know at what point we shall call them here. But from our side, the evaluation function is vital. And like I said, we always, there are those statutory evaluations that we undertake, like the evaluation of the plan. That one, if you don't have it, you can't say anything. In cabinet, in parliament, you have no plan. The first thing they will ask you, where is the step? Which is showing that we should have another plan. So that one is already institutionalized. Always, and I take the midterm review to see if we are really moving towards, attaining the results of the plan. Or if there is any change, we can adjust and move otherwise if it is not relevant. Then we also undertake the end term. And this one of the plan. And also, actually, from the conceptualization, we are always supposed to undertake the end term like 3 years after the plan has been finalized to see if there are some impacts. Because otherwise, if you just undertake it after the last year of the plan, some of the impacts are not seen. Those impacts will come maybe after 2 or 3 years. So that's why, but now when you ask for resources to undertake such studies, people don't appreciate. So you can use the Bureau statistics to inform plan. But of course, we've been working with the Bureau to make them understand why they should streamline their processes so that they are aligned to the planning framework and cycles. Now, with respect to the project, what we do as the authority, we always focus on the core projects of the plan. You know, in the plan, we always have these projects, which are the flagship. To cause the change we want, and of course, we have the other level, MBA level projects for the institution. And we always go for the big ones, especially if we are not moving very well. And the way we work, you know, because we are not implementers, we partner with the implementing institution so that we undertake something which is independent. You know, when I let you evaluate yourself, you may lose your objective and talk only the good stories about the project. But of course, for us, what we want is to learn. If we continue implementing this way, shall we, you know, be able to transform? Because our whole objective is, are we seeing the transformation? Or we are just here, you know, business as usual. So, but it has not been so vibrant for all projects. And recently, when we started working very well with PAC, we are actually, of course, like we said, PAC was a started. But now, with the good leadership and we know the confidence they have built, we are now a team. And we have actually been even working together to support the phase 2 of the IBP, where the evaluation function will come out clear. It was relegated across government. People were just doing, you know. And of course, they also have a problem.
Let's look at that evaluation function. Most evaluators share with the data.
Yes.
They know the framework.
The PAC is the virtual plan, I think the consultant from both, to plan to develop the certain phase of the IBP, which has the M&E framework. Initially, we had profiles, you know, we had profiles, and as they can tell the story. When the project ends, it is very hard for you to attribute certain, you know, certain milestones on the project. And the weakness was the way we plan for projects, even us at institution. We don't always detail the M&E format of this project. We always talk about the key thing the project is going to address. But the results under the respective components of the projects are always forgotten. Yeah, we can't tell, of course, we also have a project team at MPA. But now, if you have a profile, and I ask you, what stage is this project? I know you can lie to me and tell me it is at 50%. But if I ask you a second question, show me how you got the 50%. What would you use to estimate the 50%? And we told them the best way is for us to have detailed annualized results of that project, so that we know that if we have received this much, we have been able to implement this much, and this much is what? And then even at the end, as we're trying to close the project, if we have clear results, it is easy for us to undertake the evaluative study. And we are picking that. It's a process. And of course, given the fact that some of our projects, the ones we are currently implementing, are not structured in that format, they also need to be reviewed to try and have key results that we can use to undertake some of these studies, not statements. The projects have been.
If we were to ask a question, does PIM and the one we know which is done
The M&E,
I'm asking that question. M&E is there. The road is built up and people to the road. But the impact statement, as you are saying, it will be done after. Our M&E is what is there. That is, there's no change.
the M&E we do is an input because it helps us, get follow-up, but also build, a stock of data, which will, of course, be helpful for us to undertake the other studies. But the problem we have is that some of the studies are not one, and that what we do is we stop on the M&E. This routine, we collect data. Then when the project ends, we stop, close the project, not even assess the impact. Yet we have built data points as we undertake in the M&E. But at the end of the project, the funding is cut off, the donor goes, you can't undertake the study. And that's why for me, as a key point of this training, finance, we need to ring-fence financing for undertaking these studies. Tell you there are no soft spots for budget cuts. Because every time they want to cut, M&E is one of the areas where they go and cut money, cut off the money. And, even sympathize with people who undertake M&E or 4 million or you really can't undertake a study on that small money.
It's okay. Evaluation is what was how many times but whether the terms the other high level indicator of the functions of the lives of the people around or animals or whatever, that's what it is. But we have 8 terms. That's what I'm saying. One of the clear messages is that M&E, which is the project, is done. But this area, we keep talking about and hence, you should always come and stand alone. Then phase of the project site.
Yeah, I think as he said, I don't think he's the only one I've met saying the same thing in government institutions. One time I met one of the ministry's top policy management group, and they say, you did all this work just to give us only 2 numbers. All this money just to give us 2 numbers. You Makerere guys, you're very academic. That's what they say. I was facing them. I learned one thing, and I said this last time, unless we change the attitude to TPM, the senior people in TPM, it will be very hard even if we talk about impact evaluation. These are the people we need to meet, interface with them, and change them to appreciate. There are 2 hurdles here. Statistics, one step. Numbers, many people fear numbers. It's like when you talk about numbers, it's accountability. And if your corrupt numbers scares you. But also to move a step of impact. You know that story of people have been given money and they 5 billion and they'll build a stand in the pitch and they say that's 5 billion. Where did that happen in here? Yes. Not a stadium, no. The stand, these were the podium kind of at 5 billion. You do that.
Actually, the same stadium, that thing was 70 million.
Yes. Yes. So now, when you hear about impact, you just say, no, I don't want this. So one of the things I've learned that we have to do, guys, is especially the center here, we have the chance, is to actually get senior people and chat with them. Even writing is not enough, but we have to follow it up. We started that discussion. It is saying, for example, the money for evaluation is the first one to go. Interesting. I was a manager in one of the organizations, but I also there was a time where I used to pull the in and the person. Because there are some of the functions that we think we can delay. The challenge with the project, as you mentioned, by the time they reach all resignation and resignation, at the time they reach towards the end, we have run out of money. There are these big projects. Parliament takes forever to even approve the projects. When they finish, you are running in a hurry. You finish even money for salaries, meetings, that money is finished fast. Now the money for implementing the product, you start using part of that money. By the time you reach the end, there is actually no money. You have even used the money which you put there for evaluations. Donors are sometimes their projects have been part of where the donors are. By that time, they are even very irritated. They will have implemented the project. They know even if they give you money for evaluation, it is another money into the pit. What they do, they also do. What about the government running projects themselves? Those are the worst. Where the government, and now to make things worse, I think most of the donors, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it is now budget support. Most of the support is a budget support. It's rarely like before where the donors come directly and go to districts and implement. I think for the last few years, I've seen that's the improvement, the change. It is that we should capitalize on and say, you know what, now that the money is coming through this, can we integrate, make sure that some of the key projects, can we actually evaluate the impact? Science, at Millennium Project, I was looking at it, you train the people in science, so in science, technology, and engineering. Some people go to grants, but if I ask the question, where are they now? That new technology, the guys we trained, have they even impacted on, even in their own lives, even before you go to the neighbor, your own lives? You get employed, yes. But how do you know that you didn't get employed if you didn't do that course? People stop and ask, is that project actually cause a change? In terms of counting people, yes. But if it really cause an impact on the first life, we have an answer. There are certain projects that I think in government we need to convince. It is attitude training. It is not just technical capacity training. It's attitude. In fact, you find someone's a senior econometrician who knows the use of numbers, even over time, somehow they become managers and even forget the numbers. Something comes, and they're the same people who say, I know, figure this one out. They're the same guys who understand the things. So unless we get those guys at higher level, just like gender mainstreaming took forever, we also have to do it. Because gender mainstreaming in this country, not just we became a role model in Africa, but it took a lot of time convincing men to even accept this. So yes. So, but that's what I'm saying. As a center, I think I time I was talking to the principal, and I said, we need to hold a symposium. As a university, we think we are academic, but talk to these people who can easily, if we really want to see, because one time he was telling me, with the hymns of so many years, doesn't see any change, this government project, I'm telling him, why can't we have a whole symposium every year? Get the ministries to come. Let us introduce our academics, share our ideas, share with them, change, transform their attitudes, their thinking, their reasoning. We will help people who want like this, who want to make a change, But as long as those old men and the women who run the system are not convinced, there is no way. And women, because they have been doing things that way. Like you say, you used to say computers were not useful then. So they have been doing things that way, and we see they are doing it very well. They forget their neighbors are struggling. We don't know they are doing very well. They say, oh, this country has been moving forward. Why do you want us even to ask this? So me, I think from this training, from this meeting, we say we know the methodology. But can we convince others to buy in? That buying is the key component. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add to what you said, my colleague, of course, from this training, beyond the political barriers, there is also the capacity. And that's why this center is here to ensure that we close the capacity gap. But also, already pointed out that mindset change is very, very important. So I keep telling colleagues that much as we have all these tools, there is one thing that we fail to capture with these tools, and of course we cannot capture that in these methodologies. What we call the political polarization. It is a very, very, very big issue, and which we cannot capture in whatever tools that we design. But if we could have a mechanism of addressing the political issues, because personally, from experience, I've had some project sponsors, maybe they know how business is going to give a recommendation to your area. They call me and say, okay, I have this project. You tell them, no, this cannot really, it cannot pass. Looking at from an objective point of view, it does not really, from, if I look at the theory of change, I don't see any impact in the effect. Others will say, okay, we shall proceed and submit. Come to our development committee and we go to the committee and say, no, this cannot, so let's not take it forward. And one time I got one of them calling me and told me, okay, if we can't go forward, we are going to use another arm. And before you know it, they are in parliament, and the parliament is banned from these politicians, and parliament is taking a different direction to understand. So if we fail to address some of those issues, perhaps mindset change could work, and like you've already said, engaging beyond even the top managers of the institutions, but also the political will, to ensure that they understand the growth agenda of this country. The only challenge is that most of them know they are maybe in office for 5 years. They want these short-term gains and see how they can go about their lives. But also the issue of integrity is another, I would call a qualitative issue that we will not in the capture in our quantitative methodology. But it is a very, very important issue that we need really to, but equally through maybe mindset change, we could improve on the integrity of people. Because even when we say you go and do studies, baseline studies, and say the sector should be the ones to do, they'll cook for you numbers. They know what they want without even thinking about the exact impact. They know what they want, they'll just come up with numbers and say, okay, this is how the position will look like. You cannot say we have maybe two budgets for the people vetting to verify those numbers, because definitely maybe you need to go on the ground and also check the reality out there. So we also need to ensure that that is perhaps well addressed. But there is another important aspect in terms of when I look at civil service, most of the people, one of the project sponsors, after educating her about her project idea, I said, no, this is not really feasible. At the end of it all, she told me, no, Joseph, now look at the project being feasible. We don't have money, we want money. So that is the whole reason. Because now she said, you know, Joseph, look at our salary, it is very small. So I said, no, this one is not sponsoring a project, sort of a public problem, but maybe as a personal gain. And finally, we are looking at these methodologies, which would want people out there to use, beyond institutions relying on consultants. Perhaps I would recommend that we look for ways of simplifying some of these methodologies for buy-in by the different stakeholders so that they are widely accepted. Otherwise, if we have a little more of maybe complex methodology, some of the stakeholders will just look at, some people just look at 2, 3 numbers and they already say, no, I can't go that direction. So we can look at the theory behind this methodology, but maybe the PIM Center of Excellence, can we come up with the simplified methodology that could translate into templates that people can use out there without really going into the mathematics behind, and then can be sure that some people can use some of, and that's what we've done in some of the work. We come up with some templates. You know, we have, for example, the national parameters. We want someone to appraise the project. They are looking at what cost of capital do I use. We've already provided that for them. You don't need to go and start saying I need to compute this. We have a conversion of financial prices into economic prices. We have done that for people. So it becomes much easier for them as compared to saying, there's no one construct your own and then you are applying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think those are very, very key and very important points. I was listening. I entirely agree with him. When you look at the setting of this, what we are going through, you can actually simplify it into something very simple, very simplistic. And we have, as a center now, we have the room to do that and produce and distribute in a very simple way. If you want to do it this way, these are the things you need to think about at the baseline at midterm. He was talking about assessing for relevance of the project. Of course, projects go through financial analysis, but we're talking about relevance of the project, whether it remains relevant or not. We're talking about the effectiveness, the efficiency. Efficiency, everyone wants to think about that because of the money. Efficiency comes value for money, but also time and so on. But also issue of partnership, issue of sustainability. So people normally go for that. It's very easy as you put it. I can actually sit in my home and even write a report. Why? Because if I walked around this country, I know what people are saying about November bypass in Kampala. Ideally, I go out there and do it. But those are very good way of doing things. the process evaluation. But what we are saying here is, can we go a step further? It might not be for all 90% of the projects, but at least some of the key projects that are aimed at actually helping changing the world of the people. Can we make sure that somewhere we put a design there? And the challenge this has given us is that can we actually simplify the methodology and actually supply some of these institutions? We train them and say, this is how you use this. If the project comes through, check that this is there, ask for this should be done in a very simple way, knowing that you're actually putting together a design that will help us at the end to do impact evaluation. So that's one of the things that I think the challenge we have thrown back to the center. We need to do in mind. Simplifying instead of these too many formulas. I must assure you that if I was teaching just practically, even look like this, I would have cut off most of the method. It would have been more simplified and easier than it looks. But here it was the mix of both the theory and the practice. Otherwise, the practice alone after this method look very easy to do. But when the students were here, I took advantage of that to make sure that there's some in this. There are so many other ways that we can do things, but we could keep on improving on what we have talked about today. At the universities, as like I said, I was talking about science, technology, and engineering, training people in those and capacitating them in those areas. I think when you meet them, they are better. The same thing, Joseph, might just have gone through theory. One of the things I want to talk about, especially tomorrow, today afternoon, I want to give out 2 studies. I want they are reports, published reports. I want us to look at them and think through the critique. I shared that. It should be in your folders. I want us to think as a group to get through that. And tomorrow we'll do the same. But tomorrow I wanted to look at closer that Millennium Science project. We think through as a team. If we were to evaluate it, what do you think?
Member from National Planning Authority. Do we have a Uganda National Evolution Plan in place?
You mean framework? Yeah, the answer is yes. OPM developed framework. It's there. The question is, the question I have with the OPM that I've told them, I told some of the colleagues is, they are supposed to be monitoring, but actually they are also implementers. Now, how can you be monitoring and implement at the same time? So you find themselves running after their own projects. Is it actually? Those are the challenges we have. Like, was it Joseph who said, someone said, but you see our salary is very small. We want to find another making money. So yes, we have it. Actually, when you look at it, it's very impressive. It's very nice. It's rather the implementation of it. As we are saying, the class commentary and evaluation, the follow-up, all the things are there. It's being done very well. But actually, sorry, student to say, NPA does not do that very well because they send templates and we fill them in. Sometimes we don't feel the truth there. Sometimes we feel what serves us as organizations. I've seen it is only one time we're filling in one of your templates somewhere. And then you say, you can put it this way. This question is going to come. Let's put this number. And then it went, it came. None of you guys came back to us. Yeah, but because it's too much work, I must appreciate that because there's pulling from very many people. These are high-level indicators. Sometimes tracking them down to where they came from is another problem. I think the citizens of local government, this they have developed, they have become very active now doing the validation at the districts. Go back and check and validate. I think that's an improvement, but it's still not impact that. So there are so many things, sir, that are changing. So we need to change, we need to take advantage of that change to make sure impact evaluations are putting it in. Since we have champions in this organization, we work with them every day. It is very important that to complain that you hijacked my lecture. I was talking about the design, and then all of a sudden we went into yeah, no, at least we at least we have the designs, we have finished that. So what I want, so this afternoon I just want us to just look through those two studies. Now tomorrow, what I wanted to begin on is forget about this. Suppose we have a project. Which design you choose and why? So that's what I want to talk about tomorrow. Look at the features and you say, okay, what will you use? If you are at the beginning of the project, if you are at the end of the project, what would you choose to use and why? Then we get through together. As I told you, no monopoly over knowledge. It's about arguing out and agreeing on what could work and what could work. So that is for tomorrow. So no more state at tomorrow. Tomorrow is about look at the project, think about it, look at the fear of change, and ask ourselves which design we really need to do, why would it fail, why would it work, what are the challenges? Does that sound easier? Okay. So after lunch, we after lunch we come back and we form groups, and then we chat through together. And for each group, one member will actually summarize what they talked about. You want to pray? Okay, thank you.
I want to pray.
Just to, this one was for Sophia. This parish model business. We are having lunch, but we are this parish model. The understanding at the beginning was that we are trying to promote community sort of engagement, such that the public project reaches at least the people. Now, to some people, the thinking was that the way we used to talk of gender mainstreaming, I think it was gender mainstreaming, that anything you do has some gender budget. I think there was something that whatever project you prepare, you could have in an element show how it touches the ground. But now when it comes to sending money to the parish, it becomes a different thing. So me at first I thought it was your initiative as planner that whatever public money is spent has an element of involving the community or touching down there. Of course, given that there has been debate whether it should be Swiss manage the center, where policies are done, yet at the local governments at implementation level, the 20% reaches, something like that. I thought that is what was being broken, that formula. But now when it comes to sending money to the parish, it raises the question of what is it there and who is to do what. So maybe you will educate us with time what exactly we mean. Is it like mainstreaming the way they were doing gender, that every project must start, or you are sending resources to the parish so that it's related? It's not a question, but maybe some education in the future. Thank you.
Right away, like you said, the parish model from the original conceptualization was under implementation. Whereas we have adopted a programmatic approach to plan and budget. But the way we are going to implement is through a parish kind of model, where we take services to almost the lowest limit. That whatever whatever you do, like you say, whatever you do has to touch the parish. Whatever penny you spend has to have there to the parish, up to the parish level.